and to get a sense of what this war now means for West Asia, for Iran, and indeed for the United States and Israel. Joining me now is someone who's regarded as a global expert on the Middle East. He's professor at Princeton University, focuses on contemporary Middle East and Near East. Appreciate Professor Bernard Heichel joining me. Give me your sense as this war enters a sixth day, the escalation that's taking place across West Asia. Are you getting a sense that this is now exposing the fault lines that existed and are now coming out between Iran and some of the Gulf states, between Saudi and Iran? And there are even reports of missiles being targeted in the direction, and drones in the direction of Turkey. How do you see what's happening? Is the entire region unraveling?
Thank you for having me, Rajdeep. I think that, much of this was already predicted, because the Iranians had said explicitly for some time now that if they faced an existential threat to their regime from an attack either by Israel or the United States or both, that they would try to escalate and sow chaos to save their regime. And one way in which they're trying to do this is to create a global crisis in the energy markets, but also in security in the region. Try to make the cost of this war as high as possible for all regional actors, as well as for the United States. They know that President Trump wants a very quick victory, similar to Venezuela, and they're trying to deny him that. So now we're in a game of, we could call it chicken if you like, a game where which side is more resilient, which side can last longer is going to end up on top. And what we don't know is how many missiles and drones the Iranians still have. And what we don't know is how what the endurance of President Trump is to stay in this war, because he was hoping that it would end quickly and he would cut a deal with an alternative leadership from within the regime. But unfortunately for him, he killed everybody on the first day. That first attack that killed Ayatollah Khamenei killed basically most of the people that he would have had to negotiate with, or he had hoped to negotiate with.
Can I though bring you to what Iran is doing and what Israel is now doing? Israel is once again threatening to go deep into Lebanon, into your country, target Hezbollah, and you've got Iran now targeting the United Arab Emirates, which was seen as a safe haven. Qatar has been hit. The Saudis are concerned. How is this first playing out within that regional theater?
Right. So before this war happened, the Iranians did threaten that if they're attacked, they would attack the American bases and the American presence in the Gulf countries and the GCC countries, but that they might also attack oil facilities and desalination plants and electricity generation and so on. And the leaders of the GCC countries, especially the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi, the president of the UAE, said that they would, if they were attacked, if their civilian installations were attacked, that they would respond in kind, that they would join the fight on the side of the Americans against Iran. And I think what's being debated now in capitals like Abu Dhabi and Riyadh today and Doha is whether they're going to use their own missiles and their own air force to join the fight against Iran. And that's a decision that hasn't yet been made, because they will appear immediately to be siding with Israel and America, and that could be costly in terms of their image and their brand. But they also have to defend their countries, and they have to show that they're defending their countries against an Iranian attack. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment, these leaders. And I suspect that if the Iranians keep attacking...
But do you see do you see a distinction between the leaderships in these countries and the Arab street? Do you believe that they are all now united? The more Iran attacks these countries, the more they will unify around their leaderships, and Iran will be seen as the villain of the peace? Is there a Shia-Sunni dimension also somewhere in the conflicts emerging?
Yeah, so on the Arab side, the vast majority is Sunni, and you have few Shiites in the Arab GCC countries. they're a minority. So the Shiites in those countries will probably be very upset about what's happening in Iran. But the Arabs, the Sunni Arabs, are not. They see Iran as an enemy. And they don't have any sentiments like they do, for instance, for the Palestinians when it comes to the war in Gaza. They don't have sentiments for the Iranians. So they will support their leaders if the leaders decide to attack Iran. Now, the other dimension that's important to keep in mind is that the Arab leaders, despite their sentiments towards Iran, their enmity towards Iran, don't want a chaos to ensue in Iran. They don't want a civil war in Iran. They don't want a breakup of the Iranian state, because that is a country with 92 million people, highly educated, and a chaos there or a failed state there, like what we saw, for example, in Libya, would be a disaster for the Gulf region. So here, the Israelis and the Arabs are not on the same page. The Israelis don't care what happens in Iran because it's 1,000 kilometers away. But the Arabs do. And the question is, does President Trump feel closer to the Arab point of view, which is that he wants stability in Iran rather than chaos? Or is he closer to the Israeli point of view, which would say, well, if chaos happens, so be it?
So who's driving this? It's a question I've been asking many. Is this being driven in a way by Netanyahu and his obsession with sort of making Israel the power of the region and subordinating the entire West Asian region? Or is it being driven by Donald Trump, who wants to maybe secure his place in history as the one who dismantled the Iranian leadership? Who's really now driving this operation, and with what end objective?
No, I think that this is a joint Israeli-American effort. I don't think that President Trump, was somehow forced into this. He sees Iran as a major oil state, just like Venezuela. He is hoping to cut a deal with a kind of more moderate faction in the regime, so that oil can keep flowing. He's interested in a low oil price because he has his eye on the midterm elections in November in the United States. So his objective is to have a quick win in Iran. The Israeli objective is different. The Israeli objective is really to topple this regime in Iran, to stop it from being a revolutionary Islamic regime that seeks to destroy Israel. I mean, one should remember that the Iran regime has never concealed its desire to destroy Israel. And for Israel, especially after October 7th, 2023, when all the Iranian proxies and non-state actors attacked Israel, and Israel's faced a seven-front war, the Israelis will not accept Iran to behave in this way ever again.
So in conclusion, how do you see this war now heading? Do you believe that we are in for a prolonged conflict because Iran really has no option but to hold on for as long as they can? Israel seems determined in a way to dismantle the Iranian leadership, and the Americans want to cut a deal with, as you're saying, a more moderate leadership in Iran. So given these conflicting objectives, are we heading for a prolonged conflict? Because that's the direction that many now believe it could well be heading in. And what are the consequences of a prolonged confrontation for the entire West Asian region?
Yeah, so the Iranians are definitely in this for the long term because they're trying to survive and to preserve their regime. The Israelis also, I think, are in this for the long term, but the Americans and the Arabs are not. The Americans and the Arabs want a quick and decisive, end to this war, hopefully with a regime that is more moderate and less revolutionary, without ballistic missiles, without a nuclear, program, and without support for non-state actors and proxies. So there are different objectives and different, temperaments and attitudes towards whether they can stay in this fight. I suspect that if the Iranians are successful in disrupting global oil markets and gas markets and prices spike, to over $100 or more, that the Trump administration will want to end it as soon as possible. And Trump is capable of saying, we killed the supreme leader, we'll just take the victory and end it now.
Interesting. Bernard Heichel, I just want to ask you one final question. You know the Saudi regime very well. Do you believe that the Saudis or the Qataris or the Omanis, anyone now can play the role of a mediator, or has that ship completely sailed now?
Well, the Omanis were playing the role of mediator, but they got attacked by the Iranians. So, it's still possible, I think, for the Arabs to act as mediators, but they will insist on that the Iranians stop firing missiles and drones at them before they can do this. And I think, the command and control structure in Iran has broken down completely. And what you have is a devolution or a granting of delegation of power to individual units of the Revolutionary Guard. This is one of the principal forces in Iran. And these forces are operating autonomously and following a target list. And I don't think you have you have no one to really negotiate with in Iran at the moment.
Right. Well, that's extremely worrying the way you put it, Professor Heichel, and these are extremely worrying times. But for giving us that overview, I appreciate you joining me here on the news today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.